What's scarier than Satan? Well, I'm here to tell you just that. Today I'm taking you on a journey into the darkest corners of the world to discuss the scariest demons of various cultures. Who's your favorite demon? Let me know down below. I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 scary demons more terrifying than Satan. And we're kicking off the list with Bael. Bael is a figure you'll find in books about demons like The Lesser Key of Solomon, a book about demons written by someone who didn't want their name on it. Bael is a pretty scary demon, though I'm not sure if there are any demons that aren't scary. What sets Bael apart is that he's supposedly in charge of a whopping 66 legions of demons. So if you ever manage to summon this guy, you'd probably end up with a whole army of other demons to deal with as well. Besides his demon posse, this one's got some powers of his own. His main thing is invisibility. He can also make other folks invisible. As for what Bael looks like, that's a bit of a mixed bag. This guy is hard to pin down, even without the whole invisibility thing, which makes him even scarier. He's said to transform into a cat, a toad, a man. Sometimes he's even depicted as a mix of all three. Now we're heading over to Bali to discuss the Leyak. These are not naturally born demons. They started out as normal human beings who had their souls corrupted by black magic, transforming them into these terrifying. During the daytime, they look human, but when night falls, they take on their true form. A large head with bulging eyes and long fangs. I say head because their head becomes separated from their body, floating around in the air with their entrails hanging out below. I've talked about the Leyak a couple times. I just find them so creepy and cool. You can find these creatures hanging out around graveyards where they enjoy feeding on corpses, but their primary target, pregnant women. They like sucking the blood from unborn younglings. I think I'll take Satan over that any day, although I'm not a pregnant woman, in case you haven't noticed. So I'd probably be fine, but it's something I'd prefer not to witness. You know, you don't have to have something bad happen to you to know that it isn't ideal. Number 8, Krampus. Dealing with a demon would be a miserable experience at any point in the year, but Christmas, I gotta deal with the horned goat devil during the most magical time of the year. That is sad and unfair. Everyone's heard of Krampus. If Santa is Batman, then Krampus is the Joker, the anti-Santa, arriving to spread punishment to those on the naughty list every holiday season. Some young ones might get away relatively unscathed, a slap on the wrist, if you will, in the form of a beating from a demonic goat creature, but, better than the next option. Those who are particularly crappy throughout the year might just be taken away forever, thrown into Krampus's basket and whisked away before being drowned. Now, on the positive side, if the brat was bad enough where being kidnapped by a magical monster and drowned to death was a fitting enough punishment, then they probably deserved it, and the parents would probably be relieved to see them go. Next on the list, we have the Yuki-Onna. In Japanese folklore, the Yuki-Onna, which translates to snow woman, is a type of yokai, a chilling character often depicted as a vengeful spirit associated with winter and snowstorms. She is said to appear on cold, snowy nights dressed in a white. She's also said to be incredibly beautiful. She mainly targets travelers or lost souls in remote, snow-covered areas. Yuki-Onna typically approaches her victims silently and without warning, sucking out their life force with her icy cold breath, leaving them as frozen statues. Some versions portray her as a malevolent spirit who takes pleasure in causing harm to humans. Others show her to have a bit more of a sympathetic side, depicting her as a woman who died in the snow and is now bound to the winter landscape. And in these stories, she may spare those who show some kindness or even fall in love with some of her victims and set them free. All I know is that I hate winter, and the last thing I would want if I were lost in the Japanese Alps would be getting tricked into being frozen by a sexy ice spirit. And at number 6, we have Pishachas. In Hindu and Buddhist mythology, you've got these creatures called Pishachas. They're all about darkness, death, and hanging out in the underworld. Basically, they're the embodiment of evil itself. These guys like to go after the living, and like most demons, they clock in for work around nightfall. They have terrifying powers in their arsenal. We're talking shape-shifting, they can change form to mess with your head, and invisibility. So you've got to be on your guard, especially when the moon's out, because that's prime time for these underworld bad boys to come out and cause some. In a nutshell, Pishachas are the real deal when it comes to supernatural troublemakers. Darkness, death, and possession are their specialty. Stick to the daylight hours and keep an eye out for any shape-shifting, invisible creatures lurking around. Not that you can really keep your eye out for either of those things, so I guess you're screwed. At our number 5 spot is the Jinn. These entities are known to enter a victim's room, suddenly pouncing on them and pressing down with all their weight, rendering the person completely immobile. To make matters worse, they often attempt to strangle their helpless victims. Getting rid of a Jinn isn't a walk in the park. The solution typically involves prayer to Allah, seeking divine intervention to banish these demonic entities. But there are variations of the story that depict the Jinn wearing a hat, and according to some accounts, the solution typically involves prayer to Allah, seeking divine intervention to banish these demonic entities. But there are variations of the story that depict the Jinn wearing a hat, and according to some accounts, if you manage to seize the hat from the creature, you gain control over it. But attempting to snatch a hat from a supernatural being doesn't sound like the safest bet, and there's little evidence of this ever working. Phenomenon of sleep paralysis is unsettling, and that this is definitely kind of an attempt at an explanation for that. Anyway, the Jinn often associated with these nightmarish experiences in Turkish folklore. Next on the list we have Ammit. Now, while she's not a demon in the traditional sense, she is a figure in Egyptian mythology associated with the afterlife, and what this entity does is pretty horrific. Ammit, translated to devourer of the dead, is depicted as a fearsome creature with a combination of animal features: the head of a crocodile, the front legs of a lion, and the hind legs of a hippopotamus, the 3 most prominent man-eating animals that were known to ancient Egyptians. Ammit's role is judgment of the dead, particularly during the weighing of the heart ceremony. In the afterlife, the hearts of the deceased were weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. If a person's heart was found to be heavier than the feather, it indicated a life filled with wrongdoing and sin, and this is where Ammit came into play. She stood by, ready to devour those deemed unworthy. If your heart was consumed by her, it meant eternal damnation, with your soul ceasing to exist for eternity. I'm gonna guess that the possibility of dying and then being met with a crocodile, hippo, lion monster who may eat you whole probably motivated a number of people to try not to be pricks during their lifetime. Number 3, Lamashtu. Lamashtu comes from Mesopotamian mythology. She's a demon goddess often depicted with a lion's head and donkey-like teeth, the bird-like feet, and a tangled mess of hair. Lamashtu's primary claim to infamy is her malevolent activities with, again, pregnant women and infants as her prime targets. She's known to prowl around, lurking for opportunities to wreak havoc. This includes abducting newborns and committing gruesome acts like sucking their blood, or even nursing them herself sometimes, which is also an unsettling image. Her reign of terror doesn't stop there, though. She's also associated with bringing diseases, causing nightmares, polluting water, all great stuff, just causing general misery wherever she goes. In ancient Mesopotamia, Lamashtu was anything but popular, and people went to great lengths to protect themselves from her evil. They crafted amulets and chanted incantations to safeguard mothers and their babies from falling victim to her. And at number 2, we have Popobawa. This is an interesting one because it's actually a demonic creature that people have reported encounters with in relatively recent years. It's kind of in that cryptid territory. This demonic entity originates from the Tanzanian island of Pemba. Encounters with this being have been documented as far back as 1965, but it was in 1995 that reports of its activities gained more widespread attention. So, what exactly is the Popobawa? Describing its appearance isn't super straightforward, as it's said to take on a number of forms. It can resemble a bat, a human, or a winged. It's some kind of combination of a winged creature, sometimes with a single eye positioned in the center of its head. The creature is notorious for targeting men, often attacking them during the night. But it doesn't stop at physical attacks. It's also said to have the ability to possess its victims. Strangely, the Popobawa has a peculiar method of spreading fear. After an encounter, it compels its victims to share their experience with others, warning that it will return if they remain silent. And this demand has contributed to the legend's impact on the collective psyche. In 2007, a series of sightings and attacks were reported to this creature, causing a wave of fear among the local population. Many men started staying awake at night. Some even slept in groups in order to help protect themselves from it. And we're closing out the list with the Wendigo. Wendigo is a creature from North American indigenous folklore. They're described as horrifying, emaciated beings with decaying skin stretched tightly over this skeletal frame. And their appearance alone is nightmarish enough, and it's just as horrifying as it looks, with an insatiable hunger for human flesh, showing no mercy to its victims. The legend says that those who taste human flesh may become possessed by the Wendigo spirit, transferring it into themselves. And this concept of a malevolent force taking over someone's body, turning them into something dark, driving them to become cannibals, a pretty unsettling idea. Wendigo stories are often linked to the harsh realities of surviving in the northern wilderness during brutal winters, where scarcity of food has been known to push people to extremes, and it's in these times of desperation where the Wendigo is said to emerge. And it's in these times of desperation where the Wendigo emerges, compelling people to take a bite out of their best friend or even their own family. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.